In a previous episode, we talked about authentication methods, but there are a couple we didn't quite get to, which is one-time passwords and tokens. And that conversation starts right now.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
Welcome back, everyone, to Security Plus here at IT Pro TV. And today is a special episode because we talked about authentication methods in the episode right before this. If you're looking in the course library, there it is. Looks great. It was great information, but there was a couple of things we didn't get to go through because Wes said, you know what, these are so good, they require their own episode. And that's why we're here with additional authentication methods. And these are going to be the tokens and one-time passwords. Am I correct on this?
Absolutely. And I will say, Dan, that is a very politically correct way of saying Wes does a lot of this. That's for sure.
Well, I didn't want to say it.
Oh, well, that's okay. Cat's out of the bag. And if you've been watching along this series, you know that's true. That's right. We wanted to spend a little bit more time in these concepts here. So let's go ahead and let's dive into the very first thing. And what are tokens? When we talk about tokens, well, tokens are essentially an electronic component, if you will, that authenticates identities. All right. It can electronically store personal information. Now, it doesn't have to. It could be with or without a password. But let's go a little bit farther on this concept of what tokens are. I mean, in fact, you've probably seen tokens before. You didn't even realize that they were called tokens in a security context. And what I mean by that is there are a few different token types. And I want to focus on three different types here, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about each one. There's what's known as a connected token. There's what's known as a, disconnected token. And then there's what's known as a contactless token as well. And I guarantee you've at least seen one of these. And some of you maybe have seen all three of these, all right? So connected. Why do they call it connected? Well, you probably are aware of this, and if not, it's because it requires some kind of physical connection to the system. All right, examples of these? We've kind of talked about these when we talked about authentication methods. Remember, it's something you have. Do you remember the UB key? It's a little component you plug into the USB port on your computer that authenticates you. We've talked about FIDO as well, the fast identity online specification, as well as things like a smart card, right? That you maybe have to run down a strip on the side of the monitor itself. Maybe you've got that. Maybe you've got a smart card reader that's actually connected. In fact, I've seen some of the Lenovo's that actually have them built right in, where you actually got to plug them the smart card right into the laptop itself. Obviously going to be highly secure environments, but these are examples of connected tokens, right? It contains a digital information that allows you to prove you are who you say you are by something that you have. Now, and just to give you a couple of pictures of them, you've probably seen these, right? So there's the UB key that you have right there. Another thing that you have are things like disconnected, all right? And disconnected, well, that's the opposite of connected, right? It's no physical connection.
I don't understand, Wes.
I know, right?
Seems strange and odd as a concept.
That's right. The opposite's there too. So these don't require a physical connection here. And again, it's probably obvious, like Dan said here. But think about things like your authenticator apps, right? If you've got the Google Authenticator, it's not directly connected to the system that you're using, but it generates a small token, typically some kind of one-time password, which, hey, we're going to get into here coming up. If you ever seen like an RSA secure ID, I always want to say RSID.
Yeah, I've seen these actually before. A friend of mine worked for a company that he actually used, I think, that exact looking fob, and that's what he needed to do any kind of remote login or session login for his server access there. So I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then that number is constantly changing every so often.
That's right.
So that keeps it current and unhackable as supposed to be anyway.
That's right, absolutely. And then you've seen a cell phone, right? You can use your cell phone as a disconnected token through an authenticator app that will also do, if you've ever received a code, you've gone to log in. I know that multi-factor authentication, 2FA if you will, two-factor authentication is common today. You put in your password. Well, that's just not enough. We just sent you a little code to your phone, right? Well, that's a form of a token, if you will. Technically, the proper term for that is a one-time password. We'll come back to in a second. Now, the last one is contactless, no physical connection. Boy, that clears it up, doesn't it?
You just use the aura of the Force to say, I am who I am. And it goes, oh.
That's exactly it. So what's the difference here? You've probably seen this. So when we say contactless, if you've ever used something like contactless payment systems, right? Maybe you've used something like Apple Pay. Maybe you've used, what is the Android one? I can't think of it right now.
Google Pay?
I think it might be Google Pay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is another form of a contactless token. All right. And again, it's like a contactless payment. If you've ever had to touch your phone to that device, that's an example of a contactless token.
Does this use something like NFC technology to
Yes.
make this kind of? Oh, okay.
That's a great way to think of it. Your near field communication technology is typically what this does. One of the earlier ones that I remember seeing, and I had to put this little there. If you see that one all the way to the lower right hand side of your screen there, that's a speed pass. Yeah, if you ever see the mobile pay, right? That's contactless, right? It's contactless, but it's a contactless payment system. There's no physical connection, again, to the device that you're authenticating. They're maintaining the database somewhere, and you're just kind of swiping your little speed pay
It's like
or
the
speed
turnpike,
pass.
right?
Yes, that's another example.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's not near field because you're pretty far away from that thing.
That's right.
And it
Going
still
pretty
grabs
fast
you.
too.
But really neat technology. Now, what was interesting to me when we talked about the Authenticator app, you mentioned that was really a one-time password.
That's right.
So does that mean one-time passwords are tokens, but tokens aren't necessarily one-time
Well,
passwords?
yeah, tokens can be like a one-time password. More often than not, a one-time password is just really nothing more than a
specific type of token.
It kind of is. It really. I tell you what. Let me go ahead and show you what the one-time password is, because it depends on what type of OTP that you're talking about. So if you've ever had a user login, right? You've gone to log into something and you had to enter an authentication code and verify, and you typically see some kind of 6 to 8-digit code depending on where it's coming from. All right, that's a form of a one-time password. However, the way that they are generated, there's two different types. You might hear what's known as an HOTP. Generically, they're all just called one-time passwords.
Man, I don't
right?
even want to say that acronym out loud.
No, don't. Yeah.
HOTP.
Yeah, no, don't say that one. No, don't say that one out loud. So the first one is what's known as an HMAC-based one-time password, and that's just hashing message authentication code based one-time password. Well, you don't need to memorize that acronym for the exam, but let me show you what goes on with that. Yeah, it uses HMACs. No, I'm going to go a little bit farther than that.
You really cleared that up.
Boy,
for
did
us.
I
We
not
really
clear that one
appreciate
up for you? So what this does is it uses a combination of a secret key. Sometimes it's called a seed, if you will. And again, it's just a random number, and a counter is applied to that. These two components are then, there is an HMAC operation that is basically run over these two, and that essentially forms what you see. Now, I will tell you that hashed message authentication code, it's really a long string of numbers, but they basically shrink it down, and what you end up seeing is just that 6 or 8 code digit, right? Now, there's a problem with the HMACs. These are one of the earlier ones, the HOTPs there. If you will, these, notice that counter, all right? These don't expire. They only expire once you use them. So there's a problem with them, all right? Because they only expire on use, if I can gain access to a system that Dan's using that has the pre-generated HMAC-based OTPs, then I can use them. They're very susceptible to replay attacks, all right? Because again, there's a counter, and that does not expire until you use it. And that's why they came up with what is known as the TOTP, and that's the time-based one-time password. And with the time-based, it's just like an HMAC OTP. The difference here is there's a secret key and there's actually a timer, all right? And this is combined with a hash, let me see if I can say this. I'm just going to say a hash MAC. It's a hash message authentication code that produces that value. Again, to you, it looks like the same thing. But the difference here is they will expire without use. And this is what you commonly see today, all right? And if you've ever got a challenge, you've typed in a password, right? And when you type in that password, it says, okay, we're sending you, let's say, a text via an SMS message, right? So some kind of simple service message. It's going to tell, or it might even be a phone call, really. It's going to say, hey, if you don't use this, you have 30 seconds, 10 minutes, depending. It depends on how quick the timer is. Let's just say you've got 10 minutes to use it. After that 10 minutes, it expires whether you've used it or not. It's no longer valid. You mentioned that you've seen one of your friends using the RSA Secure ID. These are examples of time-based. Now, that's a token,
Right.
Right.
It's not a one-time
but
password.
It's not. But it's containing the one-time password. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was at a conference, a security conference, and a couple of the gentlemen there were talking about how they figured out that Google was not using a time-based OTP, and that they were keeping it around for until you used that one OTP. So if Google issued you an OTP and you didn't use it, the next time you asked for one, it would give you the same one. And they were using that to hack around the system and gain access, unauthorized access. And they had to do a responsible disclosure to Google and let them know, hey, this could be a problem.
Most definitely. And that gives you, when we've talked about replay attacks, if you've got something that doesn't expire and I can gain access to it, that means I've got all the time in the world to use it and I don't need to worry about rushing. So I don't know if I hope that helped. The token can contain a password. It doesn't have to contain a password. An RSA secure ID is a token that contains a one-time password, if that helps out. And those are some of the things that we really couldn't fit in the last episode. Again, a little bit more than I wanted to put in that last episode, so a little bit shorter of an episode, but definitely know some of these token types and understand the difference between the HMAC OTP and the time-based OTP, so that if you see them on the exam, you'll be doing well.
Great words of wisdom by our man Wes Bryan, and I'm glad we got the time to spend to take and really dive into what these are, because they're important topics, and that's why you're seeing this more often than not. People pushing for this type of authentication methods more often than not nowadays, because they're the more secure authentication methods that we can use. Not that we don't use the others as well, but this really can bolster up some of your security. That being said, we are done with this episode, but not to fear, there's more to come in Security Plus. We hope to see you then. Until then, have a great day.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.